Okay, I'm live to take questions about Tarabala or Tarabala, which is the correct pronunciation. Tarabala. Tarabala. So there's no questions yet. So just to review Tarabala, I'm starting a new series on this. So let's see if I can link you the one video that's in the playlist so far. Here we go. And then you can ask your questions. If you have no questions, then it's going to be a short one. Also want to make sure I have the right microphone on. 1 second. So please give questions. Okay, so Jonathan's got a question. Let me just check the microphone. It sounds reasonable. It says it's good. It's probably too loud. Jonathan asks, in the workbook, so he's referring to the report. The report comes with a workbook at the end. He says, in the workbook, if I'm applying one keyword in one direction, is it so? I wonder if I could show you guys what he's talking about. Let me do that. Give me 3 seconds so I can explain what his question is so that other people might understand what he's talking about. Grab this one. Ooh. Just give me a minute for technicalities. Okay. Now if I share this screen with you, which Safari, no, we want Chrome. It's called a window capture. And it's going to be this one. I wonder what would happen if I shared the window of the live stream. You probably get one of those infinity window effects. All right. Yeah, I will remember to move this out of the way so you can see me again. But for now, which we know is so important. But then here's the report and here's what he's asking. So it's towards the end of the report. It ends with a worksheet. Here's the worksheet, right? So here's how you use it. So his question is, let me see what his question is. His question is, if I am applying one keyword in one direction, is it valid to use a different keyword in the opposite direction? Like say my extroversion supports my scrutiny, but my scrutiny drains my rebelliousness. So he's got, obviously, the extroversion is a keyword for what planet? Rahu. And scrutiny is a keyword for what planet? Saturn. So he's got some kind of particular Tarabala between Saturn and Rahu, where Rahu supports is what? Parental? Let's look it up. let's flip you back over to this so you can see. Supports. You see, so we're looking for supports here in these columns C and D. These are all a particular type of Tarabala pair, and then there's this impending separation. It's not one of those. I have a lot of impending separations. Maybe he didn't use the exact word. Shelters. I don't find supports really. No, I guess he wasn't really giving an exact word. So I can't tell you what type of Tarabala he has between his Rahu and his Saturn, but he's got one and he wants to know. So for example, let's say supports. Let's say supports is Sampat. Let's say that it sounds most like Shema. So he wants to know if he picks. So what the. Sorry, I keep stopping and starting what I'm saying. So what you're supposed to do with these worksheets is. Step one is. There's a worksheet for every Tarabala that you have in your chart. And you have 90 of them. Because you have 10 points, the 9 planets in the ascendant, and each one creates 9 Tarabalas. It creates Tarabalas with the other 9 points, right? So you have 90 points, 90 Tarabalas. So there's going to be 90 worksheets. However, there's not actually 90 worksheets, there's 45 because they form pairs. So, for example, the one that you see on the screen right now is my ascendant and my Jupiter. Let's make sure you see it the way, right. So, Uttarashad ascendant and Chitra Jupiter is Vipad Mitra, balance. It's the impending separation relationship. It's where one planet is trying to impress the other one and keep the friendship of the other one. But the other planet doesn't like it. Doesn't like that first planet. And is trying to leave it. So it's actually Jupiter for me that is not interested in my ascendant. But my ascendant is very interested in my Jupiter. So my ascendant is trying to impress the Jupiter and win over the Jupiter. But the Jupiter is saying, get lost, buddy. So the question is about how you use this. So what you'll do is, the first step is you link columns. This is just to get a basic one. You link columns B and F. To start working with the worksheets, you just use B and F. And then later you'll use, which is just the planets. The ascendant is column B and F is column Jupiter. And then you'll use A and E in the next step. And then you'll use all 4 of them in the final step. So here you selected a word from column B for the ascendant. And I suggest 4 words for any particular planet or point. Ascendant: realness, manifestation, tangibility, appearance. So you pick one. So here, how about realness? And then you choose a word from column F, learning, for Jupiter, right? Learning, morality, prosperity, growth. We'll pick the first one, learning. Then you connect the 2 words with the connector that's in the middle of those 2, one of these, C or D, depending on which way you're going. If you're starting with the ascendant and seeing how the ascendant acts upon Jupiter, then you would use one of these purple words. So you could say realness is dedicated to learning, or realness befriends learning. This is the Mad Lib, right? Realness unites me with learning. You could use any word. Manifestation befriends morality, until you find something that all of a sudden you realize exactly what it's talking about, so that you get your anchor to what this interpretation is. That's me. I understand that now with these particular words. worded that particular way. And then once you have that anchor, you could start to figure out what the other words actually really mean. So as you see, you go both ways. You go from the ascendant to Jupiter, and then you also go from Jupiter to the ascendant, because that's the full relationship. So for example, my realness befriends my learning. That means something like the way that I try to be very realistic. My realisticness tries to impress my learning, or tries to be in harmony with my learning, right? Or use another word, morality. How this is about me, this is describing me. So it's like I try to live according to morals. Ascendant is Sampat to Jupiter. So this ascendant is trying to please Jupiter. So the way that the person does their daily life is the way that Jupiter would like. And there's various ways of saying that. The tangibility, the appearance, it tries to be moral, or it tries to be prosperous or optimistic, right? Welcoming. But you go back the other way as well, because Jupiter has a particular Tarabala that it gives back. Anytime one point gives Mitra Tarabala to something else, that point will curiously give Vipat back. And that's why the dynamic of Mitra Vipat is one person is chasing the other, and is one person chasing the other. My ascendant is chasing my Jupiter. That's basically what it's saying. Like a woman might chase a man, or a man might chase a woman, and that person that they're chasing isn't interested in them. So the Jupiter thing is not really interested in the ascendant. So Jupiter wants to divorce the ascendant, or Jupiter abandons the ascendant, or Jupiter takes me away from the ascendant. So morality takes me away from practicality. Yeah, I quit college to become a Hare Krishna. So the full thing together is my realness befriends my learning, but my learning abandons my realness. And there you have the full picture of how this Jupiter is related with the ascendant. So that's down here. See it? And then you can pick any words from here. That's the whole point of giving it to you as a worksheet. Is that you pick the words, because I don't know exactly which word is going to click for you. So what Jonathan is asking is, when I go backwards, can I change the word? So instead of my realness befriends my learning, but my learning abandons my realness, can I say my realness befriends my learning, but my morality abandons my tangibility? Fine, you do anything you want till it clicks. Okay? Till it clicks for you and you think, wait, now I understand what this is saying. But the most important thing to realize is that even the parts that don't click are very important for you to understand. They're a super important part of the interpretation. And the looking for something that clicks is so that you get, like when you're climbing a mountain, so you get a foothold. Looking for the thing that clicks is the part that allows you to start understanding what this Tarabala relationship is all about. So you branch out from there to understand what all the other words really mean in this interpretation. All right, sir? So hopefully that answers. So Stephanie says it's like a Mad Lib. So that was one question. I'm yours. Asks, would you ever consider making a compatibility report based on Tarabala? It seems like it's just asking to be done, doesn't it? So it seems like you would take... It's going to be somewhat messy, but it doesn't mean I can't do it. The simplest thing to do would be to say... the woman's moon has this Tarabala to the man's moon. So therefore, we don't expect this relationship to work, or we expect this relationship to fly really well. But the amount of accuracy I would expect from something as simple as that is very low. So you would probably want to use all the points. But where we get really complicated is how do you do cross points? And how important are those? So you need to give me a couple of months. I worked on this Tarabala report for, I don't know how many months. Maybe 6 months, I feel like. That's 6 months of work on this. So before jumping onto the next 6 months of work, I'll take a little break. But you know what I'm going to do right now? Samurai Mama, Aryan, I'm going to write it down in my to-do list. Let's see what I have. Readings. And I'm going to write down Tarabala, compatibility, because I like it. Okay, your question has been answered. Hi, Vicky. Jonathan, are there cognates okay? What do you mean by a cognate? I need to look up this word cognate, because I am a lover of words. Having the same linguistic derivation as another, yeah, of course. But I'm trying to supply you with the 4 to get you off the bat. Yeah, but see what you're doing there is perfect, right? My ambition supports my introversion, but my smoking habit, K2, drains my ambition. It's a little bit of a stretch, but anything about one planet to the other. Start with my thing. Start with the things that I've suggested on the worksheet. Get your foothold on what's going on with that, because then you'll figure out what it is about the smoking habit that's getting in the way of your ambitions. And you'll be able to figure out how to break the smoking habit, because you'll know what's driving it when you know the rest of the things associated with K2. Does it make sense? Is that clear? Because that's actually really wonderful. That's a wonderful thing about astrology, is that by grouping symbols together, for example, Mars represents weapons and Mars represents passion and anger and ambition, right? So by having those things grouped together, you realize that if you have a problem with your passion, it's also a problem with the ambition, and also a problem with anger and so forth. Whereas if you didn't have that grouping, you might think that they're unrelated. And therefore you can understand ways to solve the problem with the passion without having to fight head on with the passion. It might actually not be a problem with passion. Passion might be a side effect of a problem that we have with anger or independence, non-cooperation. So the same thing here with your example of K2 and Mars and their Tarabala. Can it show you something about having a smoking addiction? Sure it can. But it can show you something deeper first, and then that will help you understand the smoking addiction and how to deal with the smoking addiction if you wish. Okay. Let me just check this. Okay. So some of my placements, Stephanie asks, some of my placements look like they're straddling the border between 2 nakshatra. Any significance to that? The next video that I'll do, so I did one video already, I think the link is in the description, about the 9 Tarabala. The next one I'll do is I'll show you how to know the 90 Tarabala that are in your chart, how to figure those out. So when I do that, one of the points that I'll make is the exact degree, as far as Tarabala is concerned, the exact degree that the planet occupies is inconsequential. all I need to know is what side of the border it's on. So if something is on the edge of Kritika and Rohini, I don't need to know that. I just need to know which side of the border it's on. Is it in Kritika or is it in Rohini? So the question of, I have a lot of planets that are near the borders of nakshatras. That affected Tarabala at all? As far as I understand Tarabala, no, not at all. Yours asks, so what are the basic relationships established by the Tarabala? How many are mutual positive and how many are divergent dissonant? So that's what the first video that I did already is all about. The first video that's already on my channel page is called The 9 Tarabala. And what does it establish? What kind of relationships do they establish? I think it would be kind of redundant to go over that again, because that's literally the content of the video that I already published. But part of this question is how many are mutual positive and how many are divergent dissonant. So in other words, like as you saw with Jupiter and Chitra, where Jupiter's in Chitra and the ascendant in Uttarashada, they don't feel the same way about each other. Something in Uttarashada will really like something in Chitra. Doesn't it make sense? Chitra is the one who knows how to make things. And that's what Uttarashada likes. It likes to get power, to get empowered. But the thing that's in Chitra doesn't like the thing in Uttarashada, because Uttarashada is not delicate, and Uttarashada really doesn't like. It's very motivated, self-motivated. So that's a divergent, what she had called a divergent or dissonant relationship, non-reciprocated relationship. My Jupiter in Chitra doesn't like my ascendant in Uttarashada, but my ascendant in Uttarashada really likes my Jupiter in Chitra. So she's asking how many of the Tarabalas form non-reciprocating relationships like that versus how many Tarabalas form reciprocating relationships. Actually, there's only really one that forms a reciprocal relationship, and that's why it's called Ati Mitra. It's really only Ati Mitra that forms a reciprocation with Sampat. The Tarabala is if you have point A and point B is one nakshatra ahead of point A, then point B is Sampat to point B. But that also means that point B is one nakshatra behind point A, and that means that it is Ati Mitra. So that's going to be the third video, I think, or third or fourth video that I plan to do, explaining all these pairs. So that one is reciprocal. They both like each other. The only other one that's reciprocal is siblings, which is Janma Tarabala. And that's because the planets are in the same nakshatra or trying to it. So the two that are reciprocal but siblings is not really reciprocally positive. It's reciprocally neutral, or both positive and negative, strengthening and weakening. The only reciprocally positive one is Atimitra, and there are no reciprocally negative ones. All the rest of them, which are 3, I believe, they're where one person feels one way about the other, but the other feels differently. So, for example, the other one is like Jupiter and Jupiter and ascendant. The lover chasing a person that's not interested in them. That's Vipat Mitra. And then there is Kshema Naidana. They form a pair. So that's the teacher. Or that's the parent, really. It's the parent who's giving everything to the child. But the child is exhausting to take care of. The child is like the Naidana. It's exhausting. And the parent is like the Kshema, the protector. So it's not like they feel differently towards the thing, but the effect of giving all your protection to somebody else is you just gave everything to them. So it drains your resources. And then the third one is sadhana pratyak. That's like a teacher. The person is trying to, the sadhana planet is trying to discipline the other one, like a teacher, but the other planet is trying to disobey. That's sadhana pratyak. And then finally, that's it, right? Anyway, I'll make a video about them all in detail. So that covers your question. Ronaldo says, since compatibility topic was raised, one of your first videos on compatibility, you were speaking like we have one exception for every group. The rest works as predicted. There were some planets that were good with sign compatibility, could be bad because of Tarabala. Could be, yeah. Angela, Tarabala seems so much more insightful and helpful than the standard aspects we use in Western astrology. The thing that I might agree, might not agree, but the thing that's beautiful about Tarabala is that it's actually really easy. It's really easy. All that you need to do, it's easy in the sense that you can fill out a worksheet. You could just fill out a worksheet and get to the heart of the interpretation. It's not really complicated like when you do sign house astrology. Yeah, you have planet in the house, so you could do that. You could do a worksheet on planet in the house, but that planet in the house is different depending on what sign it's in and different what conjunctions it has and aspects. And Tarabala just kind of ignores all that successfully. Because it's simple in a sense, it's just dealing with planets and how many stars separate them. So that's what I feel, Angela, is that it's an easier technique. You won't be able to get the same kind of information from Tarabala as you can with house sign techniques, but then you can also not get the same information from sign house techniques that you get from Tarabala. So I wouldn't put one over the other, but they're both really cool. Bardo asks, has anybody already asked about the meaning of sun-moon relationships reflected in Tarabala? Bardo, nobody has asked that. Can you please ask it? The meaning of sun-moon relationships. So I don't understand the question, so go ahead and ask it in a way that this human being can understand. John Weaver asks, can the relationships based on Tarabala be applied towards house lordships? So now he's saying, can we you just said how it's nice and clean and self-contained. And can we mess it up? Is that allowed? Can the relationships based on Tarabala be applied towards house lordships for deeper understanding of the significance? I don't think you really should. Why? You know why I say that is, I don't think you finished. Let's say I tell you there's a diamond mine, and you go mine it, and then you come out and you ask me, you know, there's a gold mine just on the next mountain over. Is it okay if I connect this gold mine to the diamond mine? I would say, bro, get back to work. Mine this mine. So that's what I want to say in relation to your question. I don't think you got the diamonds from this mine yet, if you're already thinking that you need to put it in somewhere else. But if something obvious is helping you understand something, then fine, you can use it. Like, let's say the thing that I already showed you about Jupiter and Chitra with ascendant in Uttarashada. So you can say, well, that Jupiter is in the 10th house. So Jupiter not liking the ascendant would really affect the person's career. And the example that I gave to show you how accurate Jupiter's Vipat towards my ascendant was that I quit university to become a Hare Krishna. So that means I gave up on a career path, right? So maybe you can do that, but I don't think you need to. And I think that most of the beauty of the Tarabala is in how simple it is. It doesn't need to be mixed with a whole bunch of other things. If you don't have to be the same as me and think the same way I do, but that's the way I think. Jonathan Henkel asks, how long... We got two Johns, John Weaver and Jonathan Henkel. Oh, thank you, John, for that comment. Jonathan Henkel says, how long has Tarabala been used in India? Does it predate the usage of tropical astrology? And if so, by how much? What was its principal use? One of the cool things that I liked about the Apple TV series Silo is how people have no idea what the past was. And honestly, we have such a bad memory of the past. Once you go back like more than a week, it becomes really fuzzy. Once you go back 10 minutes, it becomes fuzzy a lot of times with people. So a question like how long has Tarabala been used in India, it needs a lot of research to figure it out. Since it is a standalone nakshatra technique, I am inclined to say it's been used since the nakshatras were used standalone, which means before the widespread usage of the zodiac as a chart tool, which means super old, more than 2,000 years old. If you say, do you have any proof of that? That's very hard to do, because like Silo, how do you prove something from the past? The documents are not preserved. The things were erased, burned, lost, disintegrated, forgotten. If I remember correctly, the Tarabala technique shows up in Brihat Jataka, if I remember correctly, which is a book by Varaha Mihira, which is quite old. I think it's, and my memory is bad too, I think it's 4th century, 2nd century, something like that. But what I'm inclined to answer you without the burden of scientific proof, what I'm inclined to say is just the logic of the thing is Tarabala is a technique that works if you completely ignore the zodiac and you only use nakshatras. Therefore, I think it's a technique that people were using before they were doing stuff with the zodiac. So I think it's a super old technique. Bardo says, can we interpret the situation where the sun and moon are in Tarabala disharmony as a challenging life path? Sure. Any weakening Tarabala is a challenge that you face. If that answer is a little bit too simple, go ahead. Feel free to ask more about your question, Bardo. Vifer asked me, I just watched the Tarabala video. Thank you. Is Tarabala used with moon nakshatra or the dominant nakshatra? Some use it with all of them. Look, I'll show you again. So I'll show you what the report looks like. Whoa, I lost my report? Where did it go? I closed it. Okay, 1 second. I'll open it again. No, it's right here. Gotcha. Bam. So, come on, kiddo. Scroll bar is minuscule. All right, so this is what the report looks like, right? So you have a chart like, this is a nakshatra wheel chart. This is for me. And then I explained the Tarabalas, briefly, the 9 Tarabalas. And then we do the tallies of what the Tarabalas, that'll be the next video that I do, is show you how to do these tallies, how to tally up the Tarabalas. The video that you just watched, the first one I did, is a more thorough explanation of this stuff. then you have the Tarabala talis. So, for example, these are the Tarabalas that affect my ascendant. Saturn is inseparable from it. It says, can you see that on the bottom? Saturn is inseparable from it. Maybe make this smaller. And I can squeeze on the side. Saturn is inseparable from it. So that's because Saturn is trying to it. Saturn is in Janma. Venus thrives on it. Atimitra. The moon enriches it. Jupiter wants to divorce it. Mercury and Ketu are dedicated to it. That's Mitra Tarabala. Rahu shelters it. That's Kshema Tarabala. The sun disciplines it. That's Sadhana Tarabala. Mars also disciplines it. Sadhana Tarabala. So the important part is you use Tarabala for the ascendant. You get every Tarabala to your ascendant, and then you use it for another planet. The reason why it's in this particular order is because what I'll show you in the third video is how you figure out your best planets. So this Saturn happens to be my best planet by Tarabala. So then here's all the Tarabalas for your Saturn. The ascendant is inseparable from it. Venus thrives on it. The Atimitra. Moon enriches it. Sampat. Jupiter wants to divorce it. Vipat. Mercury is dedicated to it. Mitra. Ketu is dedicated to it. Now, those are all the same, aren't they? Yeah, because it's in the trine to the ascendant. So for Jupiter, these are all the Tarabalas to Jupiter. The moon thrives on it. Rahu enriches it. The ascendant is dedicated to it. Saturn is dedicated to it. Venus diminishes it. The sun shelters it, etc. So that's what you do. Now, people will say, whoa, I didn't know that. Yeah, you didn't know that. That's amazing. That's the amazing part, is that this Tarabala is meant to be used like that, and how effective it is. I thought that you only use a Tarabala for whatever. So the way that Tarabala generally only gets used anymore is, how good is today? What should I do today? So today, and the way you do that is, I was born with the moon in Rohini, and today the moon is in Rohini, so I know today is a Janma Tarabala. That means that I might as well not really do anything important today, but I can just do whatever I'm already doing, because that's what Janma is good for. Or if it's in Mrigashirsha and I was born in Rohini, then today is a great day to go apply myself to something new. Reach out to form a new relationship, form a new partnership, get a new connection with something. That's the way people usually use Tarabala. That's using it outside of the context of your birth chart and only in relation to your moon. So somebody may say, well, no, Vic, you can't use Tarabala like that. No, you're ridiculous. Just because you only use a calculator to do division doesn't mean you can't use it for cosines, trigonometry, and so forth. People around you and everybody, you just use your calculators for division. But that doesn't mean that it's not meant for other things. So this is what Tarabala is fully meant for. KV? Ronaldo, so we can use this for life predictions? Of course. I mean, what is a prediction except an awareness of the outcome of a condition? That's what a prediction is. So if I understand that my Jupiter doesn't like my ascendant, then I can predict that I'm not going to be a business-oriented person, especially if my Jupiter is dominant. So I could predict that I would probably turn down an opportunity for financial prosperity or practical prosperity and security versus something of morality. John Weaver, you're 4 planets in Jeshta. Me? Who's he talking to? I don't have 4 planets in Jeshta. God help me. Vana, can we apply symbolism of the rulers of the nakshatras. Forget the rulers of the nakshatras. Go look up on Google nakshatra misconceptions Viktikara YouTube, and you'll get your head set straight about rulers of nakshatras. There are no rulers of nakshatras except gods. The gods rule nakshatras. But, there's no buts. There's no buts. But the moon is for Rohini. The moon is the Vimshotari planet for something in Rohini. That's all it is. And Rohini is also not the moon for another dasha system. So just forget it. Look it up if you care. Viktikara, YouTube, Nakshatra Misconceptions. Which is probably Nakshatra Misconceptions, is it now? What I find amazing about your report is that it is by itself as absorbing, rich, and informative as one's regular natal traditional horoscope. You can be reviewing your Tarabala for years. Jonathan Henkel, that is a great quote. Thank you. That's exactly what I felt, and that's exactly why I got inspired to work on it for 6 months. It's by itself, this one technique is as rich and revealing as all the house and sign and planet traditional zodiacal astrology. It's amazing how much juice you squeeze out of 9 Tarabalas. So what Vanna is, however, asking is, can we use the Tarabala to show the natural relationship between the rulers of the nakshatras? No, it will not match that either. It shows you that there are no rulers of the nakshatras. Otherwise, it should match. But what you can see is the quality of the nakshatra itself. So, for example, I showed you that my Jupiter is Vipat with my ascendant. Right? It means that it tries to get away from my ascendant. My Jupiter's in Chitra. I mean, this whole Tarabala technique is about how many stars, how many yogatars, how many nakshatras are between these planets. This is how simple this technique is. This is how ancient it is. Somebody asked, how old is this? This is how ancient it is. It's about how many stars are separating the planets using the principal stars, the Tarabalas, the yogatars. So if there's no stars separating it, then it's Janma. If there's 1 star separating it, then it's Mitra. If there's 2, then it's Vipat. If it's 3, it's Chema. So since it's based on the stars and the nakshatras, and you can say something in Chitra will always be Vipat, something in Uttarashad. So that tells you something about how Chitra feels about Uttarashad, which is what I talked about before. Oh, the gods as the rulers, Vanna, thank you. Wow, so you're way ahead of me. How about the gods? I don't know. I never thought about that. It'd be interesting. What do you think, Ronaldo? I don't know why. Did you intend me to feel irritated by your question or not? Because somehow I felt irritated, which is my own flaw. Oh, Billy, Billy has a question here. How would one synergize the monthly Tarabala and the birth Tarabala? I'm afraid I may not understand your question. How would one what's the monthly Tarabala? I see. Remember those videos that I did on the month with the Tarabala and the reports that I did? How would one synergize the monthly Tarabala and so then what's the birth Tarabala? So what Billy's talking about is, you don't need to reword it, I think I understood it. What he's talking about is way back when, 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, which might as well have been 80,000 years ago, way back when I did a series of videos. I can't remember. It was explaining the monthly Tarabala, and I had a report for the ingress of the moon on that month compared to your moon, right? The Tarabala of that, showing you what that month is good for. Oh, it was not the ingress, it was the full moon of that month. Really, the Tarabala between the full moon of that month to your birth moon, giving you a Tarabala idea for that month. So this is another way that you could use it. Rather than just day by day, you can do any other kind of significant point marker, like the beginning of a month or so forth. Now, what he's asking is, how does that relate to the birth? It doesn't really. One application of Tarabala is called horary or electional. How good is this month? What is this month good for? What is this day good for? And the other is, what are the forces working within myself? So the question of what are the forces working with myself is, we use Tarabala on the birth chart, within the birth chart. And the question of how does these external events or time periods relate to me, we have to compare something from the birth chart with something from a transit. Okay? So Amir's asks, Vic, in your own report, did you discover something surprising about your own chart that you never quite understood before, and yet that is very accurate? I'm in the videos that I'm doing on Tarabala, one of which is already published. The link is, I believe, in the description. You'll notice that I'm sharing my chart a lot to explain what the Tarabalas are. Yeah, actually, so yeah, quite often. But the thing is, I'm an introspective person, so there's not a lot that will surprise me about looking at myself, because I do it a lot. But so she asks, is there something about you that you never quite understood before but was very accurate? There's nothing really yet about me that I never understood before. There's some things that I've not admitted, but so for example, in that video, I forget the Tarabala, but Ketu and Mercury. Ketu and Mercury are siblings. They're Janma. They're both in the same nakshatra. So that's very interesting with how I make friends and how I talk to people and how I feel irritated by society many times. So that was all revealed by the sibling Tarabala between my Ketu and Mercury, which is not something that I didn't know about myself, but it's something that I can admit now, or like see it from when you see it through astrology. You admit it, I guess. That's what I would say. Vana says, I just love the way we are asked to personify the planets, houses, etc., and to give them different qualities and then think of them in relationships to one another. So that's one thing about Tarabala that's really nice. It's all the Tarabalas are modeled on human relationships and the way humans feel about each other. The Janma Tarabala, and I explained this in that first video that I did. The Janma Tarabala is the sibling, the way siblings feel about each other. How do siblings feel about each other? They're annoying. They're irritating. They're in your space. They're taking your stuff. Yet you can't live without them. You love them. And you support each other and you share everything. So just saying sibling for Janma, which means born together in the same birth, then you understand what that Tarabala is all about. When you say Mitra, it's a friend. What does a friend do? A friend is delightful. A friend, you have fun with a friend. And then what is the reaction to that friend? It's Ati Mitra. You adore that friend. So you can, that's why it's very easy to say like, oh, like I do here. my Jupiter adores my whatever. Like here, the moon is Atimitra to my Jupiter, right? So that means the moon thrives on my Jupiter. My moon thrives on my Jupiter. It loves my Jupiter. So right there, I mean, if you've been doing astrology for more than a week, right there, you're already starting to get a picture of what this means. And then if you haven't been doing it for more than a week, or if for some reason it's not gelling for you, that's what all this rest of this report is all about. Help you sort it out, especially the worksheets. They help you fully sort it out. So yes, I do like that a lot. Any other questions? Stephanie says, would you consider this an early form of psychological astrology before the modern adaptation of it? I don't really know what psychological astrology is. I don't keep up with stuff like that. What is psychological astrology? Jonathan now is asking the same question that Vanna was actually asking that I didn't catch. Do the gods of these nakshatras feel these ways about one another, or how they are involved? I would need to look at that. I haven't thought of that before. Personality astrology. I mean, all of astrology is personality based. And the part about the astrology that is event based is just extrapolating from what the personality supports. Like I said, if you know that Jupiter is Vipat to the ascendant, then you know that this person's personality is they're not impressed by the real world. The real world, their morality, their philosophy is not excited by the way people are actually living right now and the way things are actually done right now. I know this person's personality or psychology by knowing the relationship between Jupiter and ascendant, knowing that Jupiter is Vipat, wants to get away from the ascendant. Therefore, I can predict a million things about the person. I doubt that this person went for a high-paying salary job. For example, so should I take this job? No. Right? It's easy then. If you try to make predictions about events, you're kind of grasping in the dark unless you have a previous step to that where you understand the psychology behind events. Events are performed by people, and people are motivated by their psychology. So there is people who make a dichotomy between psychological astrology and predictive astrology are people that haven't thought about this. Events are driven by people and people are driven by their psychology. So there's no way to separate psychology from events. But if you really want to be able to make predictions comfortably, then I bet you the only way that I could imagine doing that is by understanding the psychology behind the events. Okay, so Ronaldo asks, he likes the graphics. What took more time, the graphics or the code? So the code took immensely more time. Not the code. The code is just where you write out the idea in a way that a computer can execute it. But figuring out what to tell the computer to do is what takes the most amount of time to test. Actually, honestly, if I think about it, figuring out what to do, especially with Tarabala, is pretty easy. What took me the most amount of time is when you hear something like the moon adores your Jupiter. when I hear that, I know, oh my God, that is so rich. There's so much perfect information in that little sentence, the moon adores your Jupiter. What took me the most amount of time with this report was figuring out, how do I show that to somebody? And this other statement over here, which seems a little bit obscure, Mercury hates your K2. What are the steps that I can take to reveal the information that's within that simple statement? That took a lot of work. Actually, Tarabala calculations are super simple. I'll show you how to do it in one video. And the coding is very simple, but the thing that was the most lengthy and there was the most trial and error in it was experimenting with different formats of presenting the information, how to give people access to that stuff that's deeply in there. The graphics, to be honest, when I felt too tired to work on that hard work again, I would just switch over and do some graphics work, because the graphics is fun and delightful, and it would create more inspiration. And also the thing about presenting information to people is people don't like ugly things. That's the definition of the word ugly. Something that somebody doesn't like. So if you want to present information to people in a way that they'll absorb, make it look good. Of course, you'll see that in my Tarabalas as well, that I think that way. But so dressing up the report was just kind of fun. I would say I probably spent 4 solid months on figuring out how to explain this. Probably 2 or 3 weeks on graphics, probably 2 or 3 weeks on figuring out the calculative part of it, and probably 1 or 2 weeks of coding that. Some events are not driven by psychology, they are cosmic events, like, for example, an earthquake or something like that. I bet you that it's not true. All events are driven by what you call vasana. All karma is driven by vasana. And all events are outcomes of karma. Vanalisa, as a new student of Vedic astrology, would you recommend that I order the house report or the Tarabala by myself? I know the answer. It just depends on what you feel like you're more interested in. Thank you, Angela. 27 Tarabalas in one house. I don't understand what that means. 27 Tarabalas in one house? I'm very naive, so please forgive me. I don't know what you mean in one house. The planets have Tarabalas with each other. Okay, so guess what? There's a link in the description that will link you to this Tarabala report. I hope that you will all go there and get one. Thank you so much.